Hello. This is skill 6. We're going to be sewing a pocket. This is a patch pocket, and I want you to sew at least 2 pockets, okay? While you're making your button-up shirt, if you want 2 pockets on your shirt, you can sew the skill sample pocket on your shirt and another shirt pocket. If you don't want any pockets on your shirt, you can sew both of your pockets onto scraps like this, or you can do one on the shirt and one on a scrap like this. Whatever you'd like, but I would like you to sew 2 patch pockets just for practice. Show me the first one. I will give you feedback for your skill sample grade, and then your second patch pocket will go towards your shirt grade. All right, so this is a finished example of the patch pocket we're doing. It has top stitching along this top edge. It's folded under, so it has a nice clean finish near the opening. You'll notice that there's beautiful edge stitching, very consistent distance all around the edge of it. And if you look closely, you will see that there is sort of this triangle of stabilizing stitching at the top corners of each of your pockets. So first steps with the pocket. This is what your pocket's going to look like when you cut it out. You'll notice that there should be a few notches, 1 notch here and 1 notch here on either side near the top, about 1 inch down. Now, everything above those notches is considered the pocket facing. So if you're reading the instructions and it's telling you to like turn down the edge of the pocket facing, it's everything, the pocket facing is whatever is above the notches. And that's simply what is a facing. A facing is a way to finish an opening or a raw edge of a garment or a pattern piece. And so ultimately what's going to happen is this top edge of our pocket gets like folded down to help finish it so it's not a raw edge. So that's what I just wanted to make a note of. So first things first, you're going to take this top edge and fold it to the wrong side 1/4 inch. Now, you need to be very precise, and so I need you to use a sewing gauge. 1/4 inch is rather small, okay? So if you're seeing, here is the 1 inch mark, there's the 1/2 inch mark, that is the 1/4 inch mark, okay? You line your little gauge up with that, and you're gonna fold this top edge down. Now what I like to do is get at least a little bit of it folded down the proper amount, and I hold that down while I come in with my iron. And I keep using my seam gauge all the way across as needed. This is a goofy iron, so use your steam to really set in that crease, okay? And when you're done, just make sure you got it like consistently folded. Remember, we're folding it to the wrong side. Now, next step is I want you to go and fold right sides together so that that notch is right at the top of the fold, okay? And you can pin this together if you need. Again, your notch is right at the top of that fold. Your fold down should be about 1 inch, I believe. Yep, right at 1 inch. You want to make sure it's consistent all the way across. Now, the next step that you're going to do is you're going to sew the sides of your pocket facing. Remember, all this that we've folded is our pocket facing. So you're going to come 5/8 inch in on either side, and you're going to stitch. I want you to back stitch, stitch all the way down, and then back stitch again. So once you stitch, it's going to look like this. And again, you're coming 5/8 inch in from either side, and you only need to stitch where the facing is. You don't need to go all the way down and around. Next step that we're gonna do is we're gonna trim the corners and kind of grade these edges, because ultimately what's gonna happen is this is gonna flip right side out, and we don't want all of this on the inside of there creating a bunch of bulk, okay? So you're going to trim your corners of your seam allowances diagonally, and then you are going to grade just this layer. Once you're done, it's gonna look something like this. Again, we cut the corners diagonally, and then we graded just this layer. The next thing I want you to do is turn your pocket facing right side out. You're gonna need some sort of point turner for this. So this is what some of the point turners look like, but actually my favorite point turner, a small, skinny, straight edge screwdriver. I love these for turning points. So you're gonna grab your pocket facing and turn it right side out. Be very gentle when you're poking out the corners, but you really want to poke that corner out so it's definitely a 90-degree angle. So I want to show you the difference of, look at how nice and crisp this corner looks here. And then this one is still sort of rounded and it's not really like a 90-degree angle. It's kind of goofy looking. So get your corners definitely poked out, and you can go ahead and press this, okay? And you're kind of just worrying about pressing that pocket facing at the top, okay? When you get done, you really want to make sure that it's a nice, even width all the way across. Mine's a little bit narrow right there, so I'll repress that area. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is we want to press all of our raw edges in down around the bottom of our pocket. I'm gonna ask that you start with these, kind of pull this back, and I want you to start with these diagonal edges down here at the bottom. Again, we're gonna use our seam gauge. So here's our 1 inch mark, that's 1/2 inch, and then go 1/8 of an inch more to 5/8. I want you to set your marker at 5/8, and you are going to fold that diagonal edge in 5/8 of an inch. Make sure you're doing it an even distance. Press that edge. Do both of the diagonals first, and then we'll get the other edges. Again, use your seam gauge so you're being nice and consistent all the way around the pocket. Do not like this iron. Okay, so we got our diagonals in. Now we're gonna get these straight edges. And once you sewed that kind of like top part of the pocket, these edges want to roll in. Make sure you're getting them 5/8 of an inch. 5/8 of an inch. And then also the bottom. We're just getting all of those raw edges tucked in and under so they won't be exposed once we sew our pocket onto our shirt. Use your steam to really help set that crease in. Woo, okay. That is looking like a crisp, clean pocket. So you should have straight across the top, down the sides, diagonal, diagonal, and then across the bottom. All right, so the next step that I want you to do is, before we put this on the shirt, I want you to stitch near this edge of your pocket facing. So edge stitch really close to that edge. And when you're doing it, I would have it on your sewing machine like this so you can see that you're getting really close to that edge. But definitely try to align this folded edge of the pocket with one of the lines on the bed of your machine, just so that once we turn the pocket over, the stitching will be a consistent distance from that edge, okay? So once you're done with that, it's gonna look like this. So you have your stitching across the pocket facing to kind of finish that off. Our next step is going to be to put this on our garment. So I'm just utilizing just a scrap of fabric, but let's pretend this is the front of our shirt or maybe the back of our pants where we put our back pockets. You should have two markings, and hopefully you can see, let me see if you can see those very well. I don't know if you can see those very well, but I had on my pattern piece, you should have little punch holes. I tried to mark them with an X so you can see them. But wherever those dots are is where you are going to place the upper corners of your pocket. That's how they mark pocket placement on pattern pieces. So that's how you're going to place it on your shirt. You're going to use some pins to help pin it in place. Gonna get, you can use however many pins, probably shouldn't need more than like 3 or 4. All right, there we go, got it all pinned in place. It's nice and flat and it's held down. Now, here's how I want you to sew this on. Ultimately, we're sewing around the edges. We're gonna edge stitch around the edges, all of the edges except for the top of the pocket. We still wanna be able to utilize our pocket, so we're not gonna sew across the top. But on shirts, especially on patch pockets, which is what this is a high stress point. And because when you're reaching in and putting things in your pocket, this little corner is kind of what's holding everything up. So sometimes you'll notice there's a bar tack here, or maybe like an extra triangle of stitching. We're gonna do a triangle of stitching to help stabilize this upper corner. So ultimately what we're gonna do is I want you to start your stitching here, right at the top of this top stitching right here. I want you to start here. You're gonna kind of go up diagonally, not way in, just diagonally a little bit. You're gonna put your needle down, pivot, so you can stitch across over to that corner, needle down, pivot, edge stitch all the way down, needle down, pivot, diagonally across the bottom, and across the bottom edge, diagonal, up. You're gonna put your needle down, pivot, do a few stitches over, and then come back diagonally down and end right here, okay? So that's how I want you to stitch around the edge of the pocket. And that will build in the stabilizing stitches that we need at the upper corners. Meet me back here and I will show you what it looks like when it's all done. All right, this is what it should look like when you're done stitching. Go ahead and give it another really good solid press. And I'll zoom you in here. What I want you to notice is that I have my triangular stabilizing stitching at the top corners. It's not a huge triangle, so it doesn't cut into the width of my top pocket opening. It just helps kind of add some stability and strength to that stitching. You'll notice that my edge stitching is a very consistent, even distance from the edge of my pocket. If you're having trouble doing that when you're stitching, like seeing where you should put your needle down and pivot your fabric, you can always go in with a marking tool and you can put a little dot, a visual guide for yourself of where you should pivot, okay? That is how you sew the pocket. Good job.